Good morning, everybody. My name is Faisal Abbas. I'm the editor-in-chief of Saudi Arabia's main English language daily, Arab News. 2 years ago, I used to be one of the 70% of the youth majority. I became editor-in-chief at a very young age, 34. I believe I was the youngest at the time. Everybody didn't believe at the time that such a young person could be an editor-in-chief. 2 years later, with a lot more gray hair, this is why I'm covering my hair now. People don't even believe that I'm still in my 30s, but disruption is not an easy thing. Basically, my job is to transform for the millennials among us. This is how people used to read the news before Twitter, before social media. So my job is to make this relevant for the 70% that are in this room today. And I tell you, it's not an easy job. In the wise words of the late Stan Lee, with great powers comes great responsibility. And my responsibility this morning is to moderate the opening panel session. So newspapers in the past used to be how people started their day. In the Misk Global Forum, it's how Arab News is gonna start your day. So without further ado, if you don't mind joining me in giving a warm round of applause for our panelists who will be joining me in a second on stage. السلام عليكم صباح الخير لو تأذنون لي حنكون
Good morning. So the conversation will be in English. So if you want to use the translation equipment, you have it. And I will now speak into English. We welcome our guests.
Allow me to introduce to my direct left His Excellency Minister of Labor and Social Development in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Ahmed bin Suleiman Al-Rajhi. It's a pleasure to have you with us this morning, Your Excellency. The second panelist you already know and you're very much acquainted for. She just gave a fascinating, inspirational talk to kick-start our day. Ms. Shaima Hamidaddin is the executive manager of the Misk Global Forum and actually one of the founding members of the forum. I don't know how she's still up and fresh this morning. I know we were talking at the phone at 3 a.m.
Adrenaline.
And she's one of many people at the Misk Forum who are working day and night to bring this, I think, very aspirational event to the kingdom. Much deserved. To her left, we have Sue Siegel, who is the Chief Innovation Officer from General Electric, who's bringing us a lot of insight from the United States of America. It's a pleasure to have you with us. Is it the first time for you in the kingdom?
It is the first time I'm here.
Well, welcome to Saudi Arabia. I hope you find some time to visit our beautiful country and not have to rush back to work immediately.
I'm looking forward to that. And let me just say, salam alaikum.
Alaikum salam. And last but certainly not least, we have the United Nations Secretary General Envoy on Youth from Sri Lanka, Ms. Jayathma Wickramanayake. Jayathma, welcome. Is it your first time in Saudi Arabia?
It is, yes.
It is. Well, the same invitation is extended to you. I hope you find some time to stay in our beautiful country. We are just unearthing some of the treasures that we have that go back more than 4,000 years, and it's all a very exciting time in the kingdom with all the transformation that is going on. As you know, more than 2 years ago, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince Emir Mohammed bin Salman embarked on Vision 2030, which sought to diversify the economy of the country and empower youth, empower women. But, you know, as they say, you cannot make an omelette without breaking some eggs, which is why it is excellent that we have somebody from the government. And of course, everybody in the government is doing a tremendous job, but I believe this man might have the toughest job of all. We've heard from Shaima this morning that around 70% of the population in Saudi Arabia is less than 30. And another statistic I read, more than 50% is less than 25. Another thing I've read is that over 25 years, the population grew around 333%, which means the government has a lot of jobs to create. You look pretty calm and confident. Could you please tell us what the government, how the government plans to tackle this challenge?
First of all, I would like to thank Misk Foundation for organizing this global forum. And I fully agree, this is a very important question, and this is our day-to-day discussion, how we can map the education system, and the Minister of Education is here with the labor market requirement, keeping in mind the future jobs needed. So I wouldn't say this is an easy exercise. It's a challenging and tough call. But at the same time, we believe, especially with the Vision 2030 projects and programs that's happening today, we have lots of initiatives where we think that the youth, which I see here, and I see many of them, they couldn't have seats also. There is a potential and encouraging place for them to be part of it. And I would advise that we need all to work collaboratively with the education system and the employers who create the jobs, and the Ministry of Labor to give a clear direction about what to do and how to do and when to do it.
Excellent. Jayathma, let me go to you. We want to mix it up a little bit so it's not very orchestrated. We've just heard the figures from Saudi Arabia. We have around 50% of our population who are less than 25.
Right.
Is job creation really a regional or a Saudi problem only, or from your experience, is this something that we share with other parts of the world? And if there are other parts of the world with similar problems or challenges, how are they dealing with it?
Yes, and to give a very direct answer to your question, Faisal, the answer is no. It is not a national or a regional problem. It's actually a global issue. Right now, we are at a point of time in history where our world is younger than ever before. So if you take the global statistics, I mean, very similar to the statistics in Saudi Arabia, 1.8 billion people are between the ages of 10 and 24. And then if you take the population in the world who are under the age of 30, it makes about half of the world's population. And about 90% of that half of the world's population actually lives in developing countries, which puts them at a challenging situation. But I would like to look at this as an opportunity. You know, this is 1.8 billion opportunities for our countries, for our world, to achieve sustainable development, to achieve rapid growth and development, and to create a society that equally shares wealth among every generation, but also from every part of the society. And if we also not just look at the statistics right now, if you look at the future as well, this is only going to continue to grow. So by 2030, we are hoping that the global population will continue to grow, specifically in Asia and Africa. So by 2030, South Asia and Africa will supply 60% of the world's workforce. But then the question I think we need to ask is, how does it look like for young people? We talk about the population, but how does it really look for young people? Right now, we have 64 million young people unemployed all over the world. That is equivalent to the combined populations of many parts of the world. And then you also have a large majority of young people who are working, but still living in poverty. But if we're serious about achieving sustainable development and achieving these targets and goals by 2030, achieving zero hunger, zero poverty, then this is the point of time we have to make those investments so that these young people are capable of creating employment, but also being productive citizens and employers and employees in the years to come.
Lovely. Sue, let's bring in an innovation chief insight into this. Correct me if I'm wrong, but as head of innovation, you're in charge of or overlook artificial intelligence as well. And whereas it's solving a lot of problems, many people in the room might think you're actually causing the problem because you're taking away jobs from human to AI, which some people believe is called, absolutely inhuman. So are machines taking away our jobs, and are there parts of the world that are more affected by this? Are we, for example, affected by this phenomenon?
So the question really has to do with how should we feel about this fourth industrial revolution, which is being powered by a number of different technologies, not just artificial intelligence, which I'll come to your question in a second, but everything associated to robotics, to the world of AR, VR, so augmented reality or virtual reality, the notion of cloud, and the notion of mobility. And those are just a few of the technologies that are actually bearing on what is the possible over time. Now, everybody looks at artificial intelligence, and you immediately think it's just going to take away our jobs. Well, the reality is it's going to enable a tremendous amount of productivity. And what will have to happen is a transference and a retraining of some of those jobs in things that robots can't do, in things that, in fact, only the human condition can do, more empathic, more applied, the ability to actually apply them into analytics. But AI is going to start taking away and quickening what has been tedious. So the notion of AI taking away all these jobs, we don't believe that's the case. We fundamentally believe it will enable and it will create new jobs, just like you've seen across the first, the second, and the third industrial revolution, where everyone felt like, oh my goodness, steam is going to replace all of these human jobs. And yet we created so much more productivity and wealth for nations. When you see the third industrial revolution, where computers were in fact going to take away all of these jobs, look what's happened there. It's just enabled us to actually augment the kind of productivity that the world needs.
And Shaima, what role does an NGO like Misk Foundation, apart from setting up this amazing forum where people can exchange ideas, etc., but can you actually help the public sector or the private sector or the United Nations, for example, to collectively work together to solve this issue?
Yes, thank you, Faisal. And first, I'd like to thank my fellow panelists. I'm very humbled to be part of this great group of people. So the role that Misk Foundation plays is really a complementary role. We like to work with the corporate sector. We have a standing partnership with the UN, and we work with the government to bridge those gaps and find where we need to focus on to complement the roles of all these three different areas. I think what we offer at the foundation is twofold for the youth. Number one is we provide them with insights. So we have reports on future skills. We have a report called the Global Youth Index that we've launched today. And then we have initiatives like the Future Jobs, which identifies what potential future jobs there could be tomorrow. And the other fold that we work on is to work with partners such as my fellow panelists on working on programs, launching programs that will help equip these young people with these skills, whether it's through a challenge or an initiative or just a training program or an internship. So we identify those gaps first, and then we work on a program.
Great. So I'm going to ask a few more questions, but then I'm going to open the floor to questions. If you do have a question, please raise your hand or raise a number, and we'll gladly bring a microphone to you. There are ushers around the room, I believe, with number plates. I'll get to you in 1 minute because I would like you to also share the burden of moderating this panel. Sue, let me ask you a very important question, and this is not specific to GE, but there is a perception, perhaps not just in Saudi Arabia, but in the Arab world as a whole, that international companies don't really care about the region, that it's easy money in and out. The offices here are possibly glorified sales offices, and no real R&D, no real employment, no real development, knowledge transfer here. Is this, again, and just to be clear, we're not talking specifically about General Electric, but is this view somewhat accurate or not?
Inaccurate. So let me explain why. First of all, we've been here in the kingdom for over 80 years now. And one of the things, particularly General Electric, and let me give a little bit of detail, has been committed to doing, and I think this audience should know, General Electric now has over 70% of our business outside of the United States. And it is all about growing sustainably within country. So here in the kingdom, we have not only developed 4,000 employees here, but we also have a number of different R&D centers, a number of different manufacturing centers. We've developed 3D and additive manufacturing centers here in this country. We also established a business process center, which is about 1,000 women. We did this in collaboration with Aramco and with Tata. And this was done in a way to honor the Saudization of, in fact, some of these learnings here in country. So we're very committed because the success of the country will ultimately be the success of our company. If, in fact, we can channel the kind of talent that is here to be had, not only with youth and with women and the talent that's already existent with regards to the men population, to bring it to bear on the problems of Saudi Arabia. And we're quite pleased with the progress we've actually made here.
It's great to hear that. I see a few hands in the audience. I have one here and one there and a few back here. I wonder where the microphones are, if I can see them. Okay, so we'll start here with number 4. Sorry, just to kind of explain, the process is, again, I'm no longer a millennial, so apparently the new process is there's a number that you're going to be raised. If you raise your hand, somebody will come with a number and give you a microphone. I'm going to start with the number 4 over there. If you can kindly introduce yourself, stand up, introduce yourself, and ask us the question, please.
Assalamu alaikum and good morning, everyone. My name is Razan Farhan Al-Aqil. Welcome Jayathma to Saudi Arabia for the first time, and thank you everyone on the panel for such important information. My question is for Jayathma. With the current progress of the SDGs and with your leadership for youth at the United Nations, what are the current indicators for the Sustainable Development Goals into providing those essentials, global skills for young people around the whole world? And what can we predict from the partnership that you recently signed with the Misk Foundation? Thank you very much, everyone.
Jayathma, before you answer that question, I'm going to take one more question, and I'm then get straight to you. I'll go with number 2, please. The gentleman here.
Talal Al-Harbi. My question, I have 2 questions, really. My question, do we have to educate to work? I mean, because Your Excellency say that we should collaborate with the Minister of Education. So is the people educate just to work in the same field? I mean, this should be something just work for work and educate for educate. And other question, we say we are a developing country. So we think we need a long way to be a non-developing country. That means we need plenty of jobs and plenty of youth people. I think this youth people is a power. How we can just manage to use this power to develop our countries. Thank you, Faisal.
Talal, just 1 second. So the first question was about education. The second part, I didn't get very well.
The second part, I mean, it's a comments. We are a developing country, and we say that we have 70% of our citizens under 35. So why we didn't manage to use this power we have to develop our countries? I mean, we have, like in Saudi Arabia, we are far behind in factories, in technology.
Got it.
Thank
so
you.
we're going to answer these two questions. Your Excellency, I'm going to go with Jayathma first, and then I'm going to come to you about the question about education and youth empowerment. Jayathma, please.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you also for the question. It's a very important question and a very interesting question, I think. So in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals, we do have decent employment, productive employment, decent jobs, specifically under Goal 8 and its indicators. And then I think relating to Goal 4 on education, also we have a number of indicators that links to skills development, vocational training and education, that can help governments keep track of their investments and their progress in achieving these goals and targets. However, one of the challenges has been that the data that we receive either from the governments or from surveys and different measurements are not often disaggregated by age. So even though as a population or generally we can say that, oh, we have achieved X percentage or Y percentage, it's becoming increasingly difficult for us to say that this percentage is how the youth population is impacted by these investments. So we keep encouraging governments to collect data and evidence disaggregated by age, as much as we encourage governments and other partners to collect data disaggregated by gender. Another very important shift in the discussion on indicators is that understanding that the impacts of development does not necessarily reach every demographic group, every age group, or every group in the same way. For an example, we see in the data, in the evidence, that young women and girls are disproportionately affected by the advancements of technology. In developing countries, the digital gender gap is about 32%, and we still have about 131 million girls out of school. So here we are talking about a large group of young women and girls without even having access to basic education or basic literacy, let alone digital education. So I think as much as we talk about the future of work, artificial intelligence, fourth industrial revolution, we have to also keep in mind that the policies and frameworks that we put in place do not increase those inequalities, but rather act as a bridge to decrease those inequalities and sort of level the field for both men and women to achieve the results of the fourth industrial revolution.
Your Excellency, if I understand Talal's question, two questions correctly, and I think they feed into each other. One is, there is so much you can do at the government or at the ministry if the educational system is not supporting, is not allowing people to graduate into jobs that are available. The second question is, perhaps why do we even have this issue with so many factories and so many opportunities? I mean, we are kind of a growing country.
Well, I agree with him. First of all, we need to agree that there is always a debate between knowledge and skills needed, and this is, it has been in a discussion, and today's discussion, it's more of a skill type of requirement rather than knowledge-based requirement. So I fully support what you're saying. Yes, the direction of education, and I think now there is the leadership have decided to form a committee to focus mainly in that direction to see what is the future of education and what do we need to have for the future jobs. And also there is so many tracks needs to be looked into to see what youth do we need for the future jobs which we are anticipating. That especially with the robots and the automation coming. Now, coming back to your second question, yes, youth in Saudi Arabia is gifted by having 70% of the population is youth. The Crown Prince himself is youth, so all the programs of Vision 2030 is focusing around how to capitalize in that power. We think we have an advantage with this situation. We don't see it as an obstacle. Yes, in the short term, you would need to create more jobs, But in my opinion, medium to long term, this is a plus point. This is an advantage. We are working now to reskill some of the even the graduated youth, because some of them, they have graduated from subjects which is not required in the labor market. So we are trying to reskill their abilities to be ready to go into certain jobs. If you ask me in general, I am very optimistic about the Vision 2030 output. We have, yesterday we were in a meeting for the strategy of Vision 2030. All the 12 programs of the Vision 2030 has been kicked off. Budget have been allocated. Execution have started. So we think now we are in the implementation stage. We are not anymore in the planning stage. We believe that, in my opinion, we will need more of people in the future than what we have. Today we have, as you might know, we have 12 million expats. They live in Saudi Arabia and they contribute to the economy, and they are contributing positively to the economy. And we think in the future we'll have that mix as well and reach to the targets that's set by the vision.
Thank you. I'll take number one and then number two, please. Number one.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed Al-Rajhi. I'm from King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center. Thank you very much for the invitation together with the very talented youth here. My question goes for His Excellency, Mr. Ahmed. Do you think there is satisfaction in the collaboration between the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Education, where we can support and plan for the youth starting from the education level till they get to the employment level? And I wish maybe for the next term in 2019 that we could invite the Minister of Education. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take number two, please.
Hello, my name is Kara Padir. Thank you so much for Misk for organizing this incredible forum. I have a question to His Excellency Al-Rajhi. I see that the Saudization efforts are going very well. I'm based in Dubai, and I think Saudi has a great case of nationalization policies. I also see that in the audience there is His Excellency Engineer Al-Swaha, which is creating great programs for emerging technologies. My question is, what is the plan for young people in Saudi when it comes to emerging technologies? Are the two ministries working together? Are there incubation programs? Is there an overhaul of the education system? And how is that going to mirror in the workforce in terms of numbers by 2030? Thank you.
You are the star of the show, Your Excellency. I think we should also invite the Minister of Education next time.
He's here, so you can.
If Your Excellency would like to answer some of the questions, we'll be honored. We can get a microphone down to you.
I would strongly recommend that we share the question.
If we can kindly, one of the ushers, if we can kindly get a microphone to His Excellency.
But if you don't mind, let me start and then maybe.
Yes.
Otherwise, we might contradict. So let me start and then.
Definitely don't want any contradictions. So please start, Your Excellency, and then we'll...
First of all, thank you. It's an excellent question. The leadership have decided recently to form a ministerial committee for job market policies. This committee is formed from five ministers. It compromises from the ministers of economic planning, commerce and investment, education, civil service. His Excellency Mr. Suleiman Al-Hamidaddin is with us, so he's also a member in the committee, and myself. Now, this committee meets bi-weekly, and we discuss every 2 weeks the subject which he has mentioned. What is the map between the education and the labor market requirement, the future jobs? What do we need to do for the education system, vocational system? So this is the five ministers with lots of support team we are now planning to work out and make sure that every youth in Saudi Arabia, when he comes to education, he has a clear plan of where he wants to work after the graduation, which was not happening in the past. So he knows all the track and the future that he will pass through. Otherwise, we will have lots of duplication. So this is basically, and I'm sure His Excellency might add some.
We can kindly pass the microphone to His Excellency. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a bonus today. So, Your Excellency, thank you for taking the question. And warm round of applause, please.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. I think it's the easiest thing is to criticize the education system. It's always an easy thing to criticize the education system, but if we see that all the people here in this forum from Saudi Arabia, they are the products of the education system, whether from general education or higher education, or from the scholarship program. So I think in general, we are reviewing all the education aspects in terms of the curriculum, in terms of the skills that every student should acquire before they graduate from the general education up to higher education. And we are reviewing also all the specialization needed in higher education and how to match between the needs of the labor market and the education system. So I think it needs just to give us some time to make sure that our development of education system is moving in the right direction. The general education, we think that every student should have at least the window to develop their skills, the critical thinking skills, the problem-solving skills, communication skills. These are very important for every student, regardless of their specialization. And in higher education, we would like to see more project-based education in terms that students can be very close to the needs on the labor market and the needs of all the private sector needs. And so I don't think we have critical issues here, but it's with the Vision 2030, we are moving in the right direction.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Those of us who are aware of the portfolio, the heavy portfolio that you have, know what sort of challenges you have inherited. And on behalf of us all, we wish you all the best. Thank you for taking this question. Allow me to go to Sue, just for kind of...
We didn't answer the second question. I would, if you don't mind, I would ask if His Excellency Engineer Abdullah Suwaha can highlight maybe in the question, and then maybe I can follow.
Your Excellency, you're supposed to create jobs, not take mine.
So I would like to second what His Excellency have said. The game plan through the Vision Realization Program about developing the talent focuses from KG to K-12 on STEAM. And we started this journey in collaboration with His Excellency and also His Excellency on Saudiya Tubarmaj, Saudi codes. Last year, we touched, in collaboration with Misk, 300,000 students. This year, it's not yet announced, but we are marching towards 1 million students, teaching them coding in KG through K-12. Secondly, when it comes to higher ed, we're focusing on 3 specializations: on data science, artificial intelligence, and cybersecurity. We started this journey with His Excellency last year. For the first time this season, 11 out of the 30 universities in the kingdom provides graduates, master's degrees and PhD degrees in these specializations. We're close to 4,000 students, and we are marching towards 8,000 with an ambition to close the gap of 20,000.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We have 6 minutes left. I'm going to take 2 or 3 more questions, but in the meantime, I want to go to Sue until, and we go back to the audience. Sue, just sort of kind of a comparative analysis, because job creation isn't just a Saudi or a regional problem. It is also a problem in the United States, and as we know, that is a developed market. Yet all we hear is President Trump talking about jobs, jobs, jobs. So clearly there is an issue there. And if you can, you've heard about the kind of conversation that we're having here. How do you compare and contrast, for example, to the reason why there is unemployment in the United States, and how is American companies or the American government dealing with this similar issues?
Well, actually, right now, the unemployment rate in the United States is at its lowest that it's been in quite some time. But I would say the following, which is, in this notion of, particularly as it relates to youth and the training of youth, particularly on the technologies that we're talking about that are becoming mostly what I would say native to that age group. A lot of us were born, maybe not you, but a lot of us were born with, not knowing the internet. But now, youth are born and they're digital natives and they understand the internet. They've only ever known a mobile platform. That combination, as you were describing, actually provides a tremendous amount of opportunity. What's happened in the US is some of the fastest growing engines of growth for the US economy really has to do with entrepreneurship, women-based businesses, which is the fastest growing actually category, and in addition to that, the notion of SMEs or new companies in terms of startups. Previously, it was understood that entrepreneurship was not something that everybody believed was a legitimate career. Now, entrepreneurship is the sexiest career, actually, in society. And so you're seeing everybody at all ages, be it youth, be it much more mature executives, that identify a problem and now are starting to understand what it means to actually create a company around that problem, and they go after it. And so you see that engine of growth, which is creating a whole bunch of new companies and new jobs, really starting to fuel the economy.
Great.
Can I mention something,
yes, Shaima,
Faisal?
of course.
So we touched up on skills, and His Excellency mentioned the coding and the AI, and then Ms. Sue also touched on it a little bit with the future jobs. But I think what we're finding more and more, especially with our 2 pieces of reports that we're launching today, the Global Future Skills Report and the Youth Index, that it's much more than these hard skills. Skills for future are decision-making, are agility, are social and emotional intelligence. So there are also soft skills that we need to focus and prepare our young people for. Otherwise, there's going to be an obvious imbalance, and they won't be successful.
Jayathma, in less developed countries, how would you compare and contrast the sort of employment problems as opposed to the conversation you just heard about Saudi Arabia and the United States?
Yes, so again, it comes back to the question of this huge skill gap which we have in terms of transiting from education to work, right? So as you said, so we see it in countries, United States or even in Europe, some parts, but most prominently in the developing world. So there is a huge gap of the skills that are required by the labor market and the skills that young people come out with out of schools and universities. And I 100% agree with Shaima when she says that the kinds of skills that you need to succeed in today's labor market, but also in the years to come, are the skills that are soft, are the skills that are flexible, are the skills that will basically teach you to learn, right? Because if you ask anyone what the future of the workforce or the future of work is going to be in 25 or 30 years, no one will be able to give you a direct answer. So our only shot at winning this race is to learn, so that throughout our careers, throughout our lives, we learn to learn. And that's why I think what His Excellency, the Minister of Education, his remark was very important, because education is what shapes us to be who we are. And if I look back at the education that I received very high quality education for free in my country, and to date, I haven't paid a single dollar to receive the education that I received. But if I really look at the skill set I use in my job today, I would say it's very hardly the skills that I learned from sitting in a formal classroom. The skills that I'm using today in my job, in working with foundations like Misk, in working with governments, ambassadors, head of states, ministers, are the skills that I learned in the playground, are the skills that I learned becoming a student leader, are the skills that I learned when I was a volunteer in my community, and those are the skills that keep shaping me as a person. So I think as much as we reform and redirect and reorient our formal educational systems, we should also focus a little bit more on informal and non-formal education, getting young people to acquire these soft skills that they will need to be successful in the labor market.
That officially concludes our time, but I'm going to abuse the fact that Shaima from Misk Foundation is here, and I'm going to give us 2 more minutes. So I'm going to take 2 very quick questions.
Granted, backstage. Yes.
Great. It's always good to have the decision maker on the table. Number 3, and then number 2, and then I'm very sorry, but we're going to have to conclude. Number 3, please, if you can ask your question.
Hi, Noura Shmaimani from Misk Foundation. Thank you to our panelists. My question is to HE Al-Rajhi. How can we improve education to work transition? I mean, I know a friend who has a small business and she put a job ad and she got thousands of applications, but one thing that stands out is that young people don't have basic skills for writing their CV. Some people like actually copied and pasted their CV to the body of the email. Some basic skills about how to apply for jobs, interview skills, these things. How can the Ministry of Labor and the Ministry of Education work together to design these programs? Thank you.
Got the point. Question number 2, very quickly, please.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Khalid Al-Zaini, TEDx chairman. The question is, as we are working in talent acquisition, we need to know, is there an important channels we are working on it so the people could choose the right major which align with the employment later on. As we made various studies in King Fahd University and other universities, we figure out that most people are choosing their major based on market needs or parent needs. So is there anything connected to the skills so far with the both ministers? Thank you.
I'm gonna have to wrap. I'm terribly sorry. I know I've seen so many hands. I'm sorry, but we try to kind of put in as much as we can. Your Excellency, there is no doubt that you are the star of today's panel. There is clearly a lot of questions about the work you do together with the Education Ministry. So it might be a bit repetitive, but it's clearly on people's minds. So if I can conclude with you on perhaps a hopeful thought for the future, perhaps something you are working together with the Education Ministry to resolve all of these questions.
Thank you. I would say that the set of needed skills definitely are changing, and there are always obstacles to upskill or reskill. I would suggest, I have seen a recent study where it shows that the 70s, the skills, the top of the rank skills needed at the 70s was reading skill, writing skill, and computational skills. Today, as Shaima mentioned, the top of the rank skills are communication, problem solving, interpersonal skills, and teamwork skills. So we have seen that revolution of change, of priorities, of skills needed with the development of technologies and revolution. So definitely nobody knows in the future what would be the skills needed. So we need to be always, in my opinion, my advice to the youth, that you never know what skills needed 20 years from now. So my advice to you, try to be always, try to be innovative, or at least adaptable to innovation. And in my opinion, this is the key word for success. Otherwise, you will, there is a day where you will find yourselves, you are behind the revolution happening with all the robotic and artificial intelligence development. Thank you.
Shaima, quick question.
Yes.
In one word, what's the most important skill for the future?
Agility.
Agility. Sue, if you have a thought you want to share or answer the same question.
The ability to learn.
The ability to learn.
I will actually end with a thought. I think as much as it's important we discuss about skills that are particularly needed for the job market, I think the biggest mistake we can do is to treat these issues in silos. I don't think we can treat the issue of unemployment, job creation, without addressing other issues. So youth development, for me really as a young person, as someone who is leading the global youth agenda at the UN, is about a holistic approach for young people's development. Because if you see, you have many skilled doctors, engineers, and scientists joining extremist groups and terrorist groups, right? So what is the point of creating a skilled laborer without the developing the humane side of them? So for me, it's really important that when we talk about skills development, in addition to the employability skills, we also talk about health, participation, volunteerism, civic participation, and talk about the skills development as a package that can develop a young person as a complete human being.
And on that note, I would like to, thank you. I would like to wrap up what has been a fascinating opening session this morning. I think we were very lucky to have this unique set of highly experienced, highly insightful panelists. Thanks to all of you as well for your questions. Your Excellencies, thank you so much for enriching our debate. All our panelists are going to be available during the coffee break if you'd like to continue the conversation. And if you'd like to read more about today's panel, go to arabnews.com. And on that note, I wish you a very successful forum. Thank you so much.